The moment I saw the text, I knew Dana Harrington had finally decided to get sloppy in the one place she thought she ruled supreme: the Elmwood Grove HOA board. "A little lazy today, aren't we?" she wrote like she was poking a bear through the bars of its cage with her Botox pen. Only problem was she forgot which one of us had the keys to the entire damn neighborhood covenants. It was 9:43 a.m. on a Wednesday in our picture-perfect suburban cul-de-sac, and I was neck-deep reviewing the compliance logs for a $140,000 city-funded renewal. The big contract for new security gates, cameras, and the community pool upgrade that would finally make Elmwood Grove the envy of every nosy neighbor within 20 miles. 11 years I'd poured into this place, handling everything from petty violation notices to classified contractor vetting for the new gate system. I'd spent over a decade stitching this community's reputation together with the kind of quiet precision Dana couldn't pronounce, let alone understand. And now here, she was trying to pick a fight over text from her HOA president throne, which I'm sure she thought she earned until you realized her son Travis had just been voted onto the board the same month she showed up with her new title and a leased Mercedes covered in proud HOA mom stickers. Nepotism isn't just alive in Elmwood Grove. It drives a golf cart around the cul-de-sac blasting out rock. She'd always been a paper-cut kind of operator, small, persistent, meant to sting when no one was looking. But this time she left a big fat fingerprint. I read the message twice. Didn't flinch. Just screenshot it, saved it clean, and flagged it for what it was: interference. Then I muted my phone, closed the group chat window, and went back to prepping the signature packet for our contractor council. Because when you know where the fault lines in the bylaws are, you don't scream about the quake. You just wait for the right total land. Real quick, if you're one of the 97% dealing with HOA hell without subscribing, take a second and hit that button. It means the world to the team digging up these Karen takedowns. And yeah, give it a like if you've ever had to smile through yard sabotage by someone who thinks compliance is just a suggestion like no bird feeders over 3 feet tall. Back to Dana. This wasn't her first dig. She tried the friendly suggestion route a dozen times before, commenting on my tone in emails, flagging my delays in meetings where the real delay was her forgetting the difference between a special assessment and a violation fine. But this text, this one was different. It wasn't veiled. It was logged. And that made it leverage. What she didn't know, and what her son Travis sure as hell never bothered to read, was that my name sat in one specific place on the agreement we were about to sign with SecureGuard contractors. Section 4A, Key Community Liaison, Contract Continuity Agent. Fancy phrase, but it meant one simple thing. If I was interfered with, harassed, or removed in any way, the entire $140,000 contract could be voided at the contractor's discretion. Why? Because I wrote that clause 4 years ago when we almost lost the security grant because a previous board exec tried to override a risk flag I'd raised on camera placement near the pool. That clause had sat there untouched through 6 board reviews, 3 presidents, and 2 special assessment rounds. No one thought it had ever mattered until an HOA president with a Chardonnay addiction and a God complex decided to leave a paper trail 5 hours before we hit sign. So I didn't reply. I didn't confront. I didn't even vent to the neighborhood Slack. I just sat back in my Adirondack chair on the patio, sipped the coffee that had gone cold during morning prep, and hit forward. The email went to one person, Martin Ingersoll, lead counsel for SecureGuard. Subject line: message from Elmwood Grove HOA president this morning. No caps, no commentary, just a screenshot and my full signature line beneath it. Then I closed my inbox and went back to work. Not out of pettiness, out of protocol. Because Dana Harrington thought she was pressing a button labeled snark. She had no idea she'd pulled the pin on a grenade that could blow up the whole pool renovation and leave every lawn in the neighborhood looking like a war zone of unfinished construction. Martin didn't reply immediately. Federal contractor types never do. They don't rush. They circulate. And that's exactly what I wanted, because once that text hit his inbox, it wouldn't just sit there. It would slither across a chain of partners, associates, and risk compliance consultants faster than Dana's Pinot Grigio spills at the annual block party gala. I had no interest in throwing a tantrum or starting a formal complaint. That's what Dana would have expected. That's what Travis would have smugly screenshot to the board with some backhanded concerns about team cohesion. Nah, let them keep underestimating me. I've always preferred letting documentation speak for itself. Clean, time-stamped, admissible. Her little jab just became a documented pattern of hostile interference, and she sent it herself. The second the email left my outbox, I silenced notifications across the board. Neighborhood Slack muted. Internal email filtered to a folder titled Echo Chamber. Even my calendar auto-rejected meetings for the next 4 hours. Not out of pettiness, out of precision. I needed clean air to prep the doc packet, because even if the deal stalled, every comma and credential had to be airtight in case things shifted back into motion. And if they didn't, even better. I reviewed the writer again. Section 4, buried deep in a forest of vendor stipulations and term triggers. One line in particular always gave me a strange cold satisfaction. Continuity of contract is contingent upon the uninterrupted access and professional autonomy of the named key community liaison. Autonomy. She really should have looked that word up before thumbing her little text. You see, most board members never read the side clauses, especially not the ones negotiated by people like me. Non-flashy, mid-org, not pool party-facing types. But contractors? They don't skip. Every clause is a bullet point waiting to be fired if something goes sideways. Martin had flagged that one back in the original draft phase. Redundancy? He'd asked. I told him insurance. And now here we were. Insurance claim pending. 2 hours passed. Nothing. No reply. No panic. Just the steady rhythm of legal gears turning somewhere in a high-rise across town. Travis wandered by around 11:30, holding a smoothie the color of envy and ignorance, cruising past my driveway in his golf cart like he owned street. Hey, you good on that gate spec list? He asked as if he hadn't CC'd me on 6 contradictory requests this morning alone. Already sent, I said without looking up. Nice. Mom says to loop her in on anything mission critical. I didn't laugh, didn't blink, just tapped the folder where the contract draft lived. Noted, because here's the thing about power. Real power. It doesn't bark. It doesn't posture. It waits. It prepares. And when the right moment comes, it doesn't ask for a spotlight. It flips the entire neighborhood's lighting. Dana wanted to play Empire games using her son's board title and her ex-husband's Rolodex of city inspectors. What she forgot is I built the damn scaffolding under her ivory tower. And I knew exactly which bolts were rusted. So I waited because I've seen storms gather before. This one was different. It didn't smell like rain. It smelled like smoke. 2:17 p.m. Sharp. The Zoom call started. Video on. Audio crisp. Everyone had their game face on, especially Dana, who showed up with her usual highball glass of overconfidence and pearls that looked like they were choking her last shred of integrity. Travis dialed in from what looked like the golf course. Perfect place to be when you're 10 minutes from derailing a $140,000 community contract. The contractor's team was already there. Martin Ingersoll, flanked by 2 quiet sharks in black frame glasses. I'd dealt with Martin for years. He never said a word that didn't carry the weight of someone else's future with it. And today, he was smiling like a man who already knew the ending. I had my docs prepped, timeline checked, references tagged. If this went sideways, it wouldn't be because of me. I sent my greeting. One of our internal board members, Tanner, the VP of operations who somehow thought operations meant ordering the right color mulch, kicked things off with the usual, "We're thrilled to finalize today" speech that could have been pulled from a LinkedIn template. Then Martin raised a hand, calm, steady, like he was about to ask where the restroom was. Before we proceed with the signature sequence, he said, "We'd like to confirm compliance with Section 4A of the Continuity Framework." You could hear the oxygen leave the Zoom. Dana leaned forward like she didn't quite catch it. "Sorry, what section?" Martin didn't flinch. He shared his screen. My email was there, clean and centered. He zoomed into my signature block. Everyone could see it. One line bolded beneath my contact info. Key Community Liaison, Section 4A, Contract Continuity Agent. Then he opened the PDF of the contract, scrolled fast, stopped, highlighted the section header in pale yellow, then pulled out a digital red pen. Continuity, he read slowly, shall be considered void in the event the named key individual is not present and unimpeded in execution of their duties at the time of closing. The word unimpeded bled red under his pen. No one spoke. Dana blinked, tilted her head slightly like she was processing it, but her mouth was a little too tight, her fingers a little too still. Travis had already gone off camera, probably pretending to take a call or crying into his caddy's shoulder. Martin let the silence linger, then added, still cool as a glass of bourbon, "We've received recent correspondence that could constitute interference. Our legal team would like clarity before signatures proceed." Tanner stammered something about reviewing internally. Dana opened her mouth, but Martin turned off screen sharing before she could say a word. Like a curtain dropping at the exact second before someone ruins the show. I didn't speak. I didn't need to because the clause didn't need interpretation. It didn't ask for context. It said what it said, and everyone on that call understood what it meant. Dana had pulled the pin with that text. Martin just handed her the grenade. By Friday morning, the wires had gone quiet. Disbursements frozen. The $140,000 that was supposed to start moving that afternoon held indefinitely. Not rejected, just paused, the kind of pause that smells like someone struck a match in a gas leak. And now everyone was waiting to see who lights a cigarette. The first ripple came from compliance. A flat internal memo titled Unscheduled Audit, Internal Communications Review went out community-wide at 7:12 a.m. 2 hours later, someone in legal added a line. All outbound executive communications under review retroactive to Q3 of last year. Nobody used names, but they didn't have to. Then came the external notice. Risk counsel from the contractor side fired off a formal inquiry titled Request for Clarity. Section 4, a hostile interference. It wasn't accusatory. It didn't have to be. That phrase, hostile interference, crawled under everyone's skin like a bad truth you've been trying to forget. You could feel it hit the neighborhood like a slap through a locked glass door. I wasn't copied, of course not. But my phone pinged anyway. Someone from the board anonymously, no subject, sent me a screenshot of Dana's name populating a log. 11 entries, 11 messages flagged as non-standard communication tone. All to me, no one else. The first one, nearly a year ago. You tend to overcomplicate things. Try being useful instead of right. The most recent, well, she signed that one with a smirk. Funny thing is I never responded to any of them, not once. I just documented them, labeled them, and filed them into a private folder titled If She Ever. I hadn't known exactly when I'd need them, but I always knew it was a matter of when, not if. Now the board was trying to pretend surprise. We're conducting a review of communication styles within leadership. The email said, like harassment was just a bold font choice. But the real shift came in the streets. Faces changed. People who used to wave and smile at Dana now ducked into garages when they heard her heels clicking down the sidewalk. One director, Gary from the landscaping committee, walked the long way around the cul-de-sac just to avoid crossing her line of sight. And in Zoom meetings, no one said her name out loud anymore, just awkward glances and too long pauses. The air tightened when she entered a room like everyone was holding their breath and waiting for the ceiling to drop. Meanwhile, Travis tried damage control in the most Travis way possible, dropping phrases like miscommunication chain and procedural clarification loop into Slack threads he barely understood. Every time he opened his mouth, he confirmed just how far out of his depth he really was. Word around the board was that he tried to throw it back on me, claimed I misunderstood a harmless check-in, but the logs don't care about spin. Neither does a continuity clause signed in ink and burned into contract infrastructure. And me? I didn't gloat, didn't strut, just kept doing my job. Reviewed red lines, checked audit trails, ate lunch alone on the rooftop terrace overlooking the half-finished pool site. Same as always. Let the paper do the talking. Let the records breathe. Because the beautiful thing about documentation is that it doesn't blink when accused. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't lie. It just sits there quiet, time-stamped, and lethal. It was around 3 p.m. when the ping came through. Subject line: Contract Writer Discovery. Immediate attention. The kind of message that doesn't wait for a polite opening. Just barrel straight to legal with that heavy thud only truth can carry. Turns out the rabbit hole went deeper than Section 4A. Internal legal had unearthed something overlooked during every round of edits, every last-minute scramble for signatures. Appendix 4A, short, tidy, and deadly, named Continuity Personnel C, Addendum 3. Most people glossed over it, buried in the end matter of a 280-page contract full of indemnity language and procurement jargon no one outside HOA circles could decode. But Addendum 3, that one was very simple. It had my name, full legal, middle initial, job title, and a signature line signed by both parties. The Contractors Council and our former board chair with a date and an amendment header. Personnel essential to contract integrity and compliance execution. The contractor flagged it immediately. The delay turned into a formal notice of breach. Council didn't yell. They didn't even raise their voice, just sent one sentence that rolled like thunder. Due to interference with the named continuity personnel, we will be reviewing contractual validity in full and may require renegotiation of all terms. In other words, back to square one. Start over. Do not pass go. Do not touch a single dollar of the $140,000 until we say otherwise. Leadership started unraveling like cheap suit stitching. Our general counsel's face reportedly went bone white during the emergency Zoom. He actually asked, "Why didn't we catch this?" The answer: they had. They just didn't care. They thought continuity clauses were just procedural fluff, stuff you include to keep compliance people happy. But I wasn't fluff, and I damn sure wasn't happy. Dana tried to wave it off in the boardroom, allegedly saying something about flexible definitions of interference. But the contractors team wasn't playing games. They didn't care if she meant it as a joke or a power play. The clause wasn't vague. The language was ironclad. They had signed it. I had drafted it 4 years ago after a near breach caused by a VP skipping protocol on a city disclosure. I remember that night working late, headphones in, rewriting section headers while everyone else went home. Legal had asked me to clean up the language on a revised template. I'd added that clause as a shield for exactly this scenario. No drama, no fight, just a quiet signature that made sure someone like Dana ever pulled this exact stunt, the contractor would have every right to slam the brakes. And now they had. I didn't say a word as the emails flew. Didn't gloat when a senior board member called me whispering, "Did you really write that clause?" I just said, "Check the metadata." Every document we filed had edit logs. Every file had fingerprints. Mine were everywhere. They'd finally read what they signed. Sober silence swept through the executive board chat. Not fear exactly. Worse, recognition. The dawning awareness that the person they tried to sideline wasn't a passenger in this deal. I was the engine, and they'd thrown a wrench straight into my gears. And now the machine was stopped. The emergency board session was scheduled for 8 a.m. Monday. 7 members, no catering, no idle small talk, no glossy quarterly packets, just a sterile Zoom room, stiff suits, and the metallic taste of legal panic in the air. The Contractors Council dialed in 10 minutes early. Martin Ingersoll, unshaven and unreadable, like he'd been up all night carving case law into someone's future. Dana sat at the far end of the virtual table, pearls tighter than usual, mouth already pursed into the shape of denial. Travis wasn't even in the room. Word was he'd been advised to limit exposure. Translation: they were finally realizing nepotism didn't qualify as risk mitigation. Martin didn't start with pleasantries, just a low breath and a calm tone that cut deeper than a scream. "You sign a continuity clause," he said, then allowed that continuity to be jeopardized. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Instead, he clicked once, and up came the screenshot, the now infamous text bubble. A little lazy today, aren't we? The timestamp glowed like a digital confession. Then he clicked again. This time it was the clause highlighted in pale yellow, crisp and exact. Continuity shall be considered void in the event the named key individual is not present and unimpeded. He let it sit there. Dana opened her mouth. God knows what excuse she was about to summon, but Martin rotated his laptop screen toward her slowly, deliberately, like he was offering her one last chance to read her own mistake. She looked at it, didn't blink, didn't speak. Because what could she say? That was a joke? That the person she'd spent a year undermining, micromanaging, and publicly mocking hadn't felt impeded? That she didn't understand what named personnel meant despite signing off on the clause herself 3 fiscal cycles ago? No one bailed her out. Not the general counsel, who now looked like he was trying to disappear into his blazer. Not the board chair, who stared at the screen like he was calculating the cost of pretending it was all a misunderstanding. Martin waited exactly 4 seconds longer than necessary. Then, the contractor is now reviewing alternative paths forward, including full contract withdrawal. Per Section 6.3, a breach in personnel integrity triggers renegotiation or termination. He didn't look angry, just tired, like a man who's delivered the same autopsy too many times and has no energy left for false hope. Someone coughed. The Zoom stayed frozen. Dana finally looked away. Down, not up. Like even she knew there was no salvaging the optics now. And me? I wasn't there. They didn't invite me, but my signature was there. My design was there. I didn't need a chair at the table to pull the floor out from under it. The delay notice came in at 10:42 a.m. Sharp, clinical, no exclamation points, no threats. Just a single-page PDF from contractor counsel stating their intent to suspend closing activities pending full internal and external review of Clause 4A compliance and named personnel continuity. It landed like a guillotine blade wrapped in linen. Quiet, final, and unmistakably sharp. 2 minutes later, legal fired off a community-wide bulletin. Effective immediately, all communication with contractor representatives must be routed through general counsel. No exceptions. The subtext was deafening. Don't touch anything. Don't say anything. And for the love of God, don't try to fix it. Damage control had officially replaced deal-making. At 11:03, the audit lock went live. Dana's credentials were suspended, temporarily, of course, but everyone understood what pending review really meant in this context. Her access to financial systems, partner correspondence, and vendor platforms was revoked in one silent sweep. A digital ghosting. I doubt she saw it coming. Or maybe she did, and that's why she hadn't shown her face since the boardroom. People pretended not to notice. Conversations in the streets turned hushed. Slack channels got suddenly quiet when her name appeared in the sidebar. I watched it all unfold like someone reading the final pages of a book they'd written years ago. The ending was inevitable. The characters just hadn't figured it out yet. Then came the funniest email of the day from IT. Subject: Credential Suspension Notification, Dana Harrington. Body: This message is to inform you that access for the above user has been disabled pending administrative review. Please route any critical communications via the office of the board chair. They didn't even include her title. No president, no acting executive, just the above user. That's when I knew it was over. The neighborhood hadn't collapsed, but the foundation had been pulled like a loose thread, and everyone could feel it unraveling beneath their feet. Meanwhile, my inbox stayed dead calm. No panicked summons, no polite nudges, just one message worth opening from Claire, my former committee intern. Subject line: saw the clause. Damn. Inside a single sentence. You okay? I stared at it longer than I needed to. Then I typed, better than okay. Because it was true. I didn't burn anything down. I didn't leak, shout, or threaten. I just did the one thing they never expected me to do. Hold the receipts, draft the clause, name the consequences, and wait. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was enforcing terms. The kind they signed without reading. The kind they mocked as belt and suspenders governance. The kind no one cared about until it stopped $140,000 dead in its tracks. And the best part? I still hadn't said a word. They didn't call me back into the boardroom. No apology. No, we should have listened. No clumsy olive branch wrapped in HR-approved language. I wasn't surprised. When people like Dana fall, it's never with grace. It's with a muffled thud and a mad scramble to pretend they never existed. Instead, I got a neat little calendar invite titled Consulting Proposal, Contractor Relationship Recovery. No subject line panic. No urgent. Just a tidy attempt to tie a ribbon around a bomb crater. The proposal came from Tanner. Polite, polished, the kind of message you know was rewritten 12 times by someone trying to avoid admitting just how far things had gone off the rails. It opened with some boilerplate. In light of recent contract developments, the board would value your insights in a strategic capacity. Strategic. That was rich. They didn't want strategy. They wanted triage. Someone to walk into the contractor's office, offer calm eyes and a trustworthy voice, and explain why the last 8 months of back-channel arrogance shouldn't cost them everything. I read the proposal twice, then forwarded it to my attorney. He replied with one sentence. Time to remind them who wrote the rule book. The next day, the board received a formal legal brief from our side. Brief, professional, and loaded with precision. It outlined a transition of all licensing logs, vendor authentication trails, and contractor contact metadata. Every single handshake, timestamp, and regulatory interaction from the last 11 years. All of it now residing under my independent custody per Section 8.6 of my volunteer contract. Section 8.6. They never bothered to review that one either. It was an archival provision I'd embedded after our first big city grant renewal, designed to ensure continuity of oversight in case of restructuring or, ironically, executive overreach. It stated that in the event of material interruption to strategic operations, oversight of all in-flight vendor and contract data would default to the last active continuity agent. That was me. It had my name, my timestamp, my final approval line. No one in legal even tried to fight it. They knew they'd signed it. And so, just like that, the power shifted again. The contractor was already in quiet talks with me under NDA, but clear in their intent. We trust the systems. We trust the record. We trust you. The board's last offer came with a bigger number. Consultant fee, full autonomy, short-term scope. I declined. Not out of bitterness, but because once you've seen how the sausage is made and how many rats are crawling in the casing, you don't go back to the factory floor. Let them patch their contractor relationship. Let them spin up new roles, shuffle titles, rename committees. Let them pretend Dana was a fluke instead of a reflection. I had what I needed, not revenge, not status, just transition. Clean, final legal. My own consulting shop was already incorporated. 2 contracts in motion. One of them with a city subvendor Elmwood Grove used to push around like a discount temp. Now, they were calling me ma'am. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it files a clause, smiles, and walks out holding the keys. The revised signing happened without ceremony. No fanfare. No community-wide announcement or neighborhood Facebook post from Dana with her usual filter and caption like leading with integrity. She wasn't in the room. Travis wasn't on the call. The contractor had made it clear. If this deal was going to move forward, it was going to happen on their terms with new language and new blood. Martin, as always, kept it clinical. He shared the screen page by page, the cursor smooth, the tone flat. When he reached the final section, he paused, then clicked his pen and scrolled his initials next to a clause none of us had seen before. All continuity oversight shall be independent of executive family relations. One line. That's all. A firewall built from ash. A legal way of saying, don't ever pull that again. It was surgical. Dana was officially reassigned that afternoon. Not fired. Just tucked away into a corner role with a strategic-sounding title and zero access to anything that touched contract negotiations or city grants. Special Events Liaison, I think they called it. Might as well have stapled a scarlet letter to her email signature. The board released a bland internal memo a few hours later. Subject, organizational realignment for contractual integrity. They couched it in language about modern accountability and transparency alignment, as if this was just a quarterly pivot instead of the fallout of a slow-moving train Dana herself had steered into a wall. I didn't read the whole memo. Didn't need to. By the time it hit my inbox, I was already 3 clients deep building compliance frameworks from scratch. One of them, a neighboring HOA that had seen the Elmwood Grove chaos unfold from the sidelines, asked if I could do a lunch and learn for their new contract team. I said sure, but only if they were ready to listen. Really listen. Because that's the part most people miss. It was never just about a clause. It was about the assumption that some people get to throw weight because of last names and backroom dinners while the ones doing the actual work are expected to stay silent, take hits, and smile. But I didn't scream. I didn't burn anything down. I just pointed to what they signed. They laughed at one text. The neighborhood started to breathe again. Lawns got mowed on time. Trash cans disappeared before the sun came up. Even the pool construction crew showed up with smiles instead of side-eye. Dana's golf cart stayed parked in her driveway for weeks. People whispered that she was taking a personal sabbatical. Translation: hiding behind her perfectly manicured hedges while the board quietly stripped her of every real responsibility. Travis tried one last Hail Mary, showed up at the next open board meeting with a printed PowerPoint titled "Moving Forward Together" and a smile so fake it could have been printed on vinyl siding. He lasted 3 slides before someone in the back row, Gary from landscaping, the same guy who used to duck when Dana walked by, raised his hand and asked, "Does this presentation include any mention of the 11 documented hostile messages?" The Zoom chat exploded with thumbs-up emojis. Travis turned the color of overripe tomatoes and mumbled something about lessons learned. The board chair shut the meeting down early. No one clapped. They just quietly closed their laptops like they were closing a chapter they never wanted to read again. I watched from my own patio, coffee in hand, the same Adirondack chair where I'd sat the morning it all started. The pool fence was already going up, shiny new black aluminum that sparkled under the sun like justice finally had a coat of paint. Kids were laughing in the distance, chasing each other around the half-finished splash pad. For the first time in months, the neighborhood felt like a place people actually wanted to live instead of a pressure cooker ruled by pearls and petty fines. And the best part? I still hadn't said a single public word. The contractor sent me a personal thank you note the next week, handwritten, on thick cream stock, the kind of thing you frame instead of file. "Your foresight saved us all a lot of headaches," it read. "We look forward to many more projects together, without the drama." I smiled, folded it neatly, and slipped it into the same folder that once held Dana's texts. Then I closed the folder for good. Because some receipts you keep forever, and some you just let gather dust once the lesson has been learned. The board never invited me back to any meetings. They didn't have to. My name was still on every important document, my clause still protecting every future dollar. They knew exactly who held the keys now, and they were terrified to use the wrong one. Meanwhile, Dana's social media went strangely quiet. No more posts about strong leadership or community first. Just a single cryptic story. A picture of a half-empty wine glass with the caption, "Taking time for self-care." The neighborhood group chat had a field day. Memes flew faster than violation notices ever had. Someone photoshopped her pearls onto a cartoon grenade. Another turned the text message into a motivational poster. "A little lazy today? Try reading the contract instead." I didn't participate. I just watched the laughter roll in like waves, finally washing away years of built-up resentment. Because that's the thing about HOA Karens. They think the rules only apply to everyone else until the rules they sign come back to bite them in their perfectly highlighted hair. And when that happens, the whole neighborhood gets to laugh. Loudly. With popcorn. Weeks turned into months, and the neighborhood settled into a new rhythm. The kind where people actually talk to each other instead of reporting each other. The new gates gleamed. The cameras worked without a single complaint. The pool opened on schedule, and the splash pad became the hottest ticket in town. Kids cannonballed while parents sipped iced tea under umbrellas that no longer carried the shadow of pending fines. Dana's special events role turned out to be exactly as glamorous as it sounded. Planning the annual block party and making sure the cornhole boards matched the HOA color palette. She showed up to the first one wearing the same pearls and a smile so tight it could crack foundation. No one mentioned the text. No one had to. The silence around her was louder than any violation notice ever was. Travis kept his golf cart in the garage and started showing up to meetings with actual notes instead of smoothies. Rumor had it the board made him sign a personal code of conduct addendum that included the words, "No family interference." He didn't argue. He just nodded like a man who'd finally read the fine print. I spent my days on my new contracts, helping other HOAs draft the same kind of protective clauses I once hid in the back of a 280-page document. One client even asked me to consult on their upcoming pool renovation. "We heard what happened in Elmwood Grove," they said. "We want that kind of insurance." I smiled and told them the truth. Insurance isn't about luck. It's about reading every line before you sign. And never, ever texting the person who wrote those lines when you're feeling petty. The best part of the whole saga? The day the final payment cleared and the contractor sent the neighborhood a thank you plaque for the new community center. It listed every board member who helped make it happen. My name was at the top, right under Key Continuity Liaison. Dana's name? Nowhere. They'd quietly removed it during the final proofreading. She didn't protest. She just stared at the plaque when it was unveiled at the ribbon cutting and then walked back to her McMansion without a word. That night, the group chat lit up with celebration photos. Someone posted a side-by-side. The old Dana smiling at the camera with her Chardonnay, next to the new Dana staring at the plaque like it had personally betrayed her. The caption? "Sometimes the clause you laugh at is the one that laughs last." I didn't comment. I just poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, stepped onto my patio, and looked out over the neighborhood I'd quietly protected for 11 years. The lawns were perfect, not because of fear, but because people finally wanted them that way. The flags flew at whatever height residents liked. Bird feeders swung freely. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear kids laughing without worrying about a knock on the door from the president. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it files a clause, smiles politely, and walks away holding every key to the kingdom. I never sought revenge. I simply enforced the terms they signed without reading. And in the end, the neighborhood got exactly what it deserved. Gates that worked, a pool that sparkled, and an HOA that finally remembered who the real engine had been all along. If you're still watching, here's the lesson they all missed. Never send a snarky text to the person who wrote the rule book. Because one day that rule book might just close and take your entire empire with it. Thanks for riding along on this HOA Karen roller coaster. If you've ever been on the receiving end of ridiculous neighborhood rules, drop your own story in the comments. I read every single one. Hit subscribe so you never miss the next takedown. And remember, the quiet ones, we're always the ones holding the receipts. See you in the next neighborhood drama. Stay petty, but only on paper.